Access to the property is something that you need to think about if you're doing an environmentally potentially concerning property. So an industrial property is usually when this issue comes up. Our contracts say that the buyer can't do any invasive testing without the seller's consent. And the problem or the dilemma is created by the fact that the buyer will do a phase one report, which will now say you need a phase two, but the buyer can't do a phase two without the seller consenting. And our contract says that the seller has to consent reasonably. But the seller may not want to find out about the potential environmental problems with the property, not knowing whether the buyer is going to buy or not. On the other hand, the buyer is the one who's spent money doing a phase one report and doesn't want to have the situation where they've reached a point where there's a potential environmental issue that needs to be resolved by further investigation, but the seller won't permit the buyer to do that. Now you're at a standstill. So our contracts say the seller can't be unreasonable in granting the buyer's request to do invasive or destructive testing. As a buyer, you may want to get the seller to consent upfront, especially in an in an industrial deal where you think you might need to do a phase two if the phase one recommends it. So you can get the seller upfront to say, okay, I'll let you do a phase two to the extent that it's recommended by phase one. From the buyer's perspective, you also want to maybe add something that says buyer's not responsible for discovering any pre-existing environmental contamination, so long as the buyer doesn't aggravate that situation. A typical ad that I see is the sellers will add a requirement for the buyer or buyer's environmental engineer to have insurance. They have CGL, commercial general liability insurance that names the seller as an additional insured, E&O insurance, auto liability, and workers' comp insurance. Those are pretty typical ads that I see if somebody's very concerned about this issue.